Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Procrastinator's Pitstop. We are sitting here with another amazing guest for you today. We have with us Elizabeth Toller, Beth to her friends and family, and she is an intuitive life coach, psychic medium, tarot reader, Reiki healer, and certified fine art photographer who guides clients to elevate life, business, and art by transforming daily habits into creative rituals. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show. We have a lot of interesting ground to cover today for sure. But before we dive into that, we do like to have an icebreaker on the show. And the question for you today is which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
I love Winnie the Pooh with his very positive attitude of life. And he's got an amazing group of friends as well.
I love that. I love Winnie the Pooh. And it's so funny how Winnie the Pooh actually encompasses, I think, all of the emotions, right? Because you have Pooh, and then you have Eeyore, and then you have Rabbit, who's kind of the strict one, and then you've got Owl, who's the smart one, right?
Right. Yeah, he's got a great group of friends, though. And Tigger, who just bounces all over the place.
Yeah, honestly, I think out of Winnie the Pooh, you know what? I think I might have to go Tigger, my favorite from Winnie the Pooh.
He is. He's a fun one.
Definitely is. All right. So, Elizabeth, just sliding sort of easily into this, how would you define procrastination and what does it mean to you personally?
Procrastination to me is just the lack of interest in moving life forward. And how it kind of applies to my life is when I find myself procrastinating, AKA doom scrolling on the phone. It is the trigger to me that I need to be doing something else. It's prompting me that I need to set down the phone and get moving with life.
No, I like that. I definitely like that. And, I know that doom scrolling is one of those big ones, but, I'd like to say that it's good that you have that awareness. How did you get that awareness when you're doom scroll, like when I used to doom scroll, I didn't even really realize I was doing it. So how did you get that awareness? What trick did you use to trigger that?
I don't know if there was any one thing, but it's just been a gradual awareness over the last several years that I am spending too much time on the phone and time is passing and I'm not accomplishing anything that I want to in life. I have some big goals for my life. So wasting time isn't in the cards for me. I need to keep moving all the time. So when I find myself sitting on the couch with the phone in the hand and my fingers are starting to hurt or my eyes are starting to glaze over, it's like, okay, what am I avoiding in life? What big project do I need to start breaking down into smaller pieces so that I can tackle it? But it's just been, I think, over the last several years, just an awareness of if I keep doing these kind of more self-destructive habits, I'm not going to get to where I want to be in life.
I like that. Love that for sure. And we all know that there's no, 100% cure all or magic bullet or whatever for it. But what's been your secret sauce to kind of, once you're aware and, pushing yourself forward, what's been your secret sauce?
My secret sauce is what can I do for the next 15 minutes? And a lot of times I will set a timer and just time myself. I've got to tackle one thing for the next 15 minutes and I just pick one off the long list of to-dos on my list and set that timer and just get working on it. Whether it's something about my physical space, I need to do my dishes, I need to take the trash out, or it's, I need to be creating some social media posts, I need to be working on a speech that I'm going to be giving, you know, just pick that one thing and start doing it.
No, I love that. Just 15 minutes, just do it. And then
Yeah.
the momentum might carry you through, right? I like that
Right.
one.
You can do anything for 15 minutes. And then once you get started, then it does get that momentum going. It's like, okay, I did 15 minutes, I can do 15 more.
I definitely love that one for sure.
Yeah. And then a lot of times that 15 minutes will get me kind of into that creative flow where I'm then just in the zone of doing whatever I'm doing so I can keep going and really knock the whole project off my list instead of one little piece of it.
Love that. Definitely love that. The small wins to kind of give you that check to give you
Yes,
that little boost to keep going, right?
absolutely.
Definitely love that. One of the things that I had down here for you was a lot of times in procrastination. I've heard that some people base it around childhood experiences that create roadblocks that hold us back. Could you explain a little bit about that?
We learn from our childhood, from our parents, from people older than us, where our limitations are. And in a lot of ways, that creates the procrastination. You're trying to do something that they think is beyond your skill level or whatever when you're a child. No, don't do that. So then that sets a roadblock of this is where my limitation is. I can only do this much of things. And it sets, kind of our placement of fear as well. If I go beyond that limitation that they set for us, something's going to happen to me. So overcoming those types of fears, talking back to those voices in your head of your mother saying, don't do that or don't do this or, don't cross the street or whatever. Talking back to her, it's like, no, now I'm an adult. I can cross the street. I can do this. I can go beyond whatever that voice of your mother is saying in your head.
I like that one. I like that one. Now, you are an intuitive life coach,
Yes.
and so can you explain to us a little bit about why tapping into intuition and creativity is so essential for success?
It is. It helps us see life in different ways from different perspectives. With my intuitive life coaching, I use my abilities as a psychic medium and a tarot reader to really delve into what are those deep seated roadblocks that were ingrained in us as children, and what can we do to overcome them. And then I can also show my clients the projected outcome if they make some changes in their life. Even just some small steps, stepping just over the boundary of what they thought they could do. It just opens up so much more for them. And being able to think more creatively helps with that. We're kind of programmed in our society to walk down this road or climb this ladder of success. But once you start seeing beyond that, you can accomplish so much more. Maybe that's not the road you wanted to be on. Maybe that's not the corporate ladder you want to be climbing. There's something more. I have a couple of friends that I always refer to are the checklist people. They've got this checklist of all the things they have to do to life. Went to college, check. Got a job, check. Got married, check. Had kids, check. Bought the big house, check. Got the big yard, check. Got the pool, check. And they all think that that is going to get them to happiness when it's just checking things off the list and it's not really about living a fulfilled life. So helping people get off that kind of hamster wheel and onto the ground and have them get grounded and see what can truly be true for them in their lives.
I really like that, and being able to visualize, sort of those future paths as well. The question that often comes to mind though is, how can we sort of increase that creative sort of flow or intuition, because it's often stifled out of us by society. I mean, society again tells us what those checklists are, tells us what we should want, and then we have no idea how to figure out what we actually do want.
One of the ways that I teach my clients is by putting in really good habits, then stacking those habits to create a routine, and then elevating that routine to more of a ritual in life. And when you get to the ritual, you don't even have to think about it. I don't know how many of your listeners are religious in any way, but I was raised Roman Catholic. Somebody says to me, peace be with you, and it just comes out of my mouth, and also with you. I don't have to think about it. It just comes. So when you get your daily activities to that level where you don't have to think about them, then your mind can wander and do more creative daydreaming. So you can see the creativity in life. You can see a better way to get through the traffic. You can see a better way to work on a project if you're working in a corporate environment. You can see a different way to approach social media that will elevate everything that you're doing. It just frees up that brain capacity, gets us over all that decision fatigue. So think about how many decisions you make in, an hour period of time. If you could relieve some of that, then you can think in whole new and different ways. There's a reason that people always come up with really good ideas in the shower. It's because their brain has stopped and new ideas can come through. Their subconscious can talk to them. And it's like, hey, we're back here. We've got a really good idea. Let us out. So if you can get your day where you're doing more of that creative thinking and creative daydreaming, the more flow you'll have to your life, the more joy you'll have in your life, the less decision fatigue, the less stress. It just becomes a much more joyful place to be.
No, I definitely agree with that, and again, you're talking about re-engaging something we had a lot as kids, but I don't like to use the word beaten out of us, but it was definitely pushed out of us because, go to
Yes,
school, don't daydream, don't do this.
right. But now daydreaming in life is a really good thing.
No, I can definitely see that, how daydreaming can be a good thing. The creative, right? Because a lot of
Yes,
times too, what and I don't know how often you deal with this, but a lot of times we just get in a rut and we get bored because we do get into
yes.
that routine, right? Is that kind of where we can get that creative flow too, or is that more shutting it off because we get bored and we just shut down rather than expand?
No, I think when we get bored is when we've lost kind of that ability to daydream, that we're stuck in that rut of life. We're stuck with that to-do list. Life got difficult. Right now my father is very ill. So, it's very easy for me to want to shut off the daydreaming and just focus on all the to-dos that I need to do in my life and to be able to help him. So keeping that creative daydreaming alive is, I think, a very important part of life so that we can keep that spark of joy no matter what's happening. We've gotten off track with the difficulties of life. Life loves plot twists. So, something happens. In my life, I had a really bad year. I had a children's portrait studio. The bottom fell out of the economy. Nobody was wanting family portraits, children's portraits. One of my really good friends went on a business trip and had a heart attack and died while he was out of the country. And my mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's dementia. All the creativity just left me. With the photography studio, when I did have clients, I was only photographing, what I knew would sell. This backdrop sells, this pose sells. That's all I was doing. There was just no creativity at all. So I took that as kind of a prompt of life to change my life. I closed my studio. I got a day job in the legal field and I moved in to take care of my mother. And in that process, I just kept thinking, what can I do to get my creativity back? So I started researching, what does creativity mean? Is it just my photography? Is that the only creative part of me? Or can creativity be everything I do in my everyday life? And I came to the conclusion, one of those really big aha moments, that creativity can be everything I do every day of my life.
Every single thing?
I do my best to make every single thing that I do a little bit more creative, a little bit more interesting. Still work for lawyers during the day and, not the most creative atmosphere, but yet it is. Lawyers have to take all of those laws and all of that past precedent of case law and make a new argument about why it applies to their client or doesn't apply to their client. They are some of the most creative people that I know. And I've kind of become the fix it girl in the office. When somebody else messes something up, I'm the one who has to come up with a creative solution. So
That's
yeah. And I've actually kind of found a lot of joy in that. Somebody else's mistake is kind of my fun of figuring out something new and different to do.
I love that. Was it the the need necessitates, I can't say that. Necessitates the need to be creative, innovation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Actually, that gets me to a point we were kind of talking about before in the green room back there for a little bit. Do you worry that, and again, this is a probably kind of a controversial topic a little bit. Um, do you believe that AI is stifling our creativity, or is it going to open us up to be able to be more creative?
I think it's going to be able to help us get to be more creative. I think AI, in a lot of ways, has a lot of good things that can happen with it. For me, when I'm writing a blog post or whatever, because I work for lawyers all day and I get home at night and I'm writing my blog post and it sounds very lawyerly, I can pop it into ChatGPT and said, make this kind of more fun and quirky. And it gives me a lot of really great ideas and helps get me into that creative mindset that I can then write a blog post that is more who I am outside of working for lawyers.
Like that. So you use ChatGPT more as like a prompt. So you
Yes.
prompt ChatGPT to prompt you.
Yes. Yes. It's like, this is what I'm thinking. Give it to me in a little bit more fun way. And I'm like, okay, not quite my style, but it gives me a little bit more of the creativity flowing so I can get it to where I want it to be. So I look at it as more of an assistant. And I got to tell you, Photoshop has incorporated a lot of AI into their program. So when I'm doing a collage of images, cutting out all of those objects is so much faster now with the help of AI. I don't have to sit there for hours, trying to get that little piece out of there. It can do it in a matter of seconds for me in some cases. So I think AI is a really good assistant to help us to get more creative. And the faster pace our lives get, the little things that AI can do to help us kind of speed that up. When we were in the green room, I had mentioned that I've been cleaning up all of my digital files. And AI was great for that. I was kind of stuck. I'm like, what do I name a category for this? So I went into ChatGPT and I'm like, I've got this type of thing. What do I call it? And it gave me some really great ideas. And I'm like, okay, I like that one. So I didn't have to keep renaming that folder as I thought of something better for the next, 10 years.
I like that for sure. Actually, that's another thing about it, renaming that folder for 10 years. It goes back to that previous point that we have, right? Decision fatigue. And how
Yes.
many decisions do we make, and
Yes.
how do we become, I guess, comfortable in making those decisions and then having them stick? Because you're right. I mean, hey, I'm guilty of it too. Gone back to a website, changed text 10, 20, 30, 40 times sometimes and just kept on
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah. Um, I think when it comes to making some of those bigger decisions, that when you're not in that mode of so much decision fatigue, that it's easier to make those decisions. It's easier to see, you know, get clearer on what you want that text to be so you don't have to keep revising so many times. And getting past the decision fatigues is putting in those routines and rituals into your life where you don't have to think about, okay, now I've brushed my teeth, so now it's time for me to put on my makeup. Okay, now I've got my makeup on, now it's time to do my hair. Where in the morning, I've got a beautiful cat who I love dearly, but 6:30 every morning she decides that my bladder is her trampoline. So now that is my trigger to get myself up, and I know everything that I do in the order that I do it, and I don't have to think about it. It just happens. I get up, I pee, I feed her, I make myself a cup of coffee that gets me moving so I can join the human race. But then everything after that, it just flows. Taking a shower, putting on my makeup. And I always have a notebook with me when I'm doing all of this because I get some really great ideas why I'm putting on mascara. So I jot down all my ideas. So I think by getting all of those rituals and routines and really good stacked habits in place, you don't have to make quite so many decisions. So now as I'm walking out the door, for my day job to hit traffic, I don't feel like I'm exhausted because I've already had to make 30 decisions on, how to turn on the coffee maker and what I'm doing next and, what I'm wearing. And it just, that all flows. So then I walk out the door to the day job and I get to the day job and I'm less stressed out already. And then I have all kinds of habits and routines and rituals that I do during my day job to help the day flow a little bit easier so I don't have to make quite so many decisions. With my day job, I use a lot of time blocking. I get there in the morning and I look at the emails and I sort the emails, respond to the ones that I need to, update my to-do list of what those things are. And then I've got another block of time where I'm doing something else. And then I've got the block of time for lunch. So it's not so many decisions. It's like, okay, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm checking emails. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I am writing some briefs. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm editing some documents from one of my bosses. So with those time blocks, I don't have to think so much. And when that time block comes, it's like, okay, here's my to-do list for that time block. What am I doing next? So really making habits that increase your productivity and decrease your decision fatigue are really, I believe, the key to life.
No, I really love that, but it does beg the question because I'm one of those kinds of people that I have a ton of, for lack of a better term, brain farts. And so, is there a way that we can, I don't know, guide ourselves to be creative in ways that are maybe more productive than, say, that idea that maybe this cartoon character would look better if you had like a green hat or something?
That's a really good question because I have a lot of those brain farts as well throughout the day. And I have taken to writing them down. And then during the time block that I'm working on that kind of general topic, I revisit that. And I'm finding that a lot of those, kind of spontaneous thoughts really aren't that great or aren't necessary. Because then I'll be looking at the cartoon character and it's like, no, he's just fine the way he is. It ain't broke, don't fix it.
I like that one. Is there any ritual you use to get creative on a specific topic to sort of set it in motion?
When I set aside time for my photography, I have quite a few rituals to kind of warm me up to that kind of creativity. It comes with my studio is currently my former dining room. So it's a very small space. So it is pulling the lights out from the corner that I've shoved them into and getting all of that set up. Looking at all the bins of props that I have. I'm currently working on a series of still lifes. So I have like 5 different bins of stuff that I have picked up over the last couple of years that I keep thinking, oh, that would be great in a still life. So going through all those bins and getting that creativity, kind of easing into that creativity. It's like, okay, this is kind of the lighting I want to work with. These are some of the props that I want to work with. Let's get those all set up properly. Let's get the camera out and take a couple of test shots and see where we go. And it's those little steps that get me into the mindset of creating the image that I want.
I love that because, it's all about kind of getting you into the mood and getting you used to certain aspects. And those are like you said, triggers or cues to get your mindset in a certain thing. Sort of like how in the morning, if I really don't want to sleep in, I have to, swing my feet over the bed and put on my shoes because as soon as you put on your shoes, it's like, oh, I'm up. So, I definitely like that. What's your favorite ritual though to get you into that creative flow?
My favorite ritual would probably going to a vintage fair or a thrift store. That's where I find all of my props for my still lifes. So digging through all of that, what people think is junk, is just such creative inspiration for me. I will be digging through something and I will buy something, and my friend or my sister, who I go with quite frequently, they look at that thing I'm buying and I'm like, what in the world are you doing with that? And I'm like, oh, but I've got this thing at home and that thing at home and that and this, and that is going to make such a great little story by adding this in it. And they are just truly amazed at the crazy things that I come up with. So that would probably have to be my favorite inspiration.
I love that. I definitely love that. And I think that those vintage stores are great. I know a lot of people aren't a fan, but
Oh,
I do have one question as it relates to the creativity as well, because I kind of fell into this for a long time in corporate too, is very analytical, very, straightforward. How can we kind of, I'm not going to say turn off the analytical part, but how can we kind of exercise that creative muscle, so to speak, more than that analytical side? Because sometimes it is more beneficial.
and I think they go hand in hand, because as you're being more creative, you need to analyze whether or not it's working. So I think they can go really hand in hand. And with my creativity, especially when I'm working on a still life, there's certain rules that I need to follow to make it a successful still life. What are the rules of design that I'm using in this still life? So I need to analyze it from that point of view, but then look at it from a more creative eye and do a little bit different twist on it so it doesn't look like everybody else who is doing a still life in this style. So I really think they kind of go hand in hand, because there's times we need to analyze what we're doing and times that we need to be more creative. But how can we marry those together to be the most successful?
And do you have an example that you could give us of how you've taken a situation and where you've surprised yourself in terms of how creative you actually were?
I was working on a still life of some luggage, and I was in a rented studio at the time. And the person who I was renting the studio from had been feeding a feral cat. And this cat decided to come in to see what I was doing. So I went and got a couple of treats from the owner and stuck the treats up on the top of the suitcase, on one of the suitcases, to see if the cat would jump up there. So the cat jumped up there, got that cat's attention. So it's looking right at the camera. And it's just this incredible image that has won a lot of awards. And I am just truly amazed that that little thought of, I need that cat to be on that suitcase, and was able to make that all happen. It was just that kind of spur of the moment. How can I get this done in like 2 minutes before the cat loses interest?
Wow, the cat's got a longer attention span than most people then. I mean, 2 minutes? Come on, most people are lucky if we get 30 seconds.
Yeah, yeah, might not have been 2 minutes, but it was pretty quick. It was like I saw the cat being interested in the luggage, ran and got the treats, set him on the it was really pretty quick. It might have been less than 2 minutes. But that was the time that most surprised me about how creative I could be and how quickly I could be creative.
I love that, and it raises another sort of observation and question. You know, being creative often requires a certain amount of bravery too, right? A certain amount
Right.
of, I guess, because I call it the witch wound, but that fear of being seen and being judged and being creative. So, how do you kind of guide people, businesses, entrepreneurs through getting over that fear of being creative in their business?
It is one little step at a time, just one little baby step. This is something that I can do a little bit differently that's not going to shock everybody that I'm doing this little thing differently. And then taking one more step on how to do something a little bit differently. So it's all about those little baby steps. And before you know it, you're being much more creative in whatever situation you're at. And everybody is seeing you more creative, and it's sparking their creativity.
Love that, and I wish I had heard that probably about 6 months ago because, I took one of those challenges, right, actually, where it was, to get over that fear of judgment, for the women, it was don't wear makeup when you go out. So I just sort of took that and I said, "Well, you know what? Why not?" I got a little duck hat, and this duck hat had wings that flapped, and so I was walking around with flapping wings and hat, and it did not go over well. Well, I mean, the public was okay with it, but certain other family members were not.
I get that. So, you need to kind of work up to the duck hat.
No, but I love that, seeing how to be creative and how to be different. But that raises also the fear of like you were saying before, you were only going based on what sold and what you
Yes.
were sure sold.
Yes.
And there's that fear that if you put something creative out there that it's going to flop and it's not going
Yes.
to do anything, right?
Right.
How do you get over that? Just doing it?
Yes. I think, just forcing yourself. And I really wish I had at the time that I was stuck in that mode. I really wish I had stepped out of my comfort zone and started doing some more creative things. I have several photographer friends who are still doing children and family portraits. And, they start with the stuff they know will sell. And then at the end of the session, they throw in some more creative stuff. And they're really getting to be known now for the more creative stuff. And they're selling more of that because their clients are loving it, and their clients are then referring new clients to them, their friends and family, based on this more creative stuff. So first doing the safe thing and then doing something a little bit more creative, and that really sparks the creativity and really starts people seeing you in a new light by you doing that extra little thing.
But sometimes it's sometimes a little difficult to come up with new ideas, right? What was the example I heard in a webinar recently? I think it was Neil Patel, and he was talking about articles on like banana peels. There's 2 million articles on bananas. So what can you write about a banana that's a little bit different?
And I think that's where the AI comes in. What hasn't been talked about a banana? Is there something more to a banana than is already posted on the internet? Asking AI some things like that, and it'll spark some ideas. You know, can you dry and smoke banana seeds?
Banana seeds.
Yeah. How do you get banana seeds? Just by asking AI some simple questions, you might get to something that's just totally outrageous. That is a new spin on bananas. And I can't believe there's that many articles about bananas, but
I didn't fact check that, but
yeah,
I mean, it's probably a lot.
yes,
Um, but there are some businesses like you said, like lawyers or um, some of the drier things, or some of the darker things. They need to be creative.
yes.
You know, just having it sort of raw just doesn't sit very well. I mean, when you talk about things like pet euthanasia services or funeral homes, or I saw some really creative things from funeral homes, but you gotta kind of have to gauge your audience, I think, for that because some of it
Yes,
isn't received well, right?
right, right. So, yeah, there are ways to be more creative in those industries. And just having that mental capacity to be able to think in that way really helps. And that a lot of that is taking away the decision fatigue so that you can actually think and you're not so exhausted from having to decide what brand of toilet paper to buy.
Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
I did not know. I learned something new today.
Yeah. I actually saw a documentary quite a few years ago now, but it was about Russian refugees and how they were acclimating to living in the United States. And all of them said they were having such a hard time because there's so many choices for everything. And this one woman talked a lot about toilet paper. And if you think about it, do you want quilted or unquilted? Do you want single ply, double ply, triple ply? Do you want it scented or unscented? There's so many decisions to make, where in Russia there was one toilet paper.
No, that makes a no, that makes a ton of sense. When you're talking about decision fatigue, then I'm guessing that you're a proponent for default decisions too. So, if
Yes.
you're going out to a restaurant or something, order whatever, you know what you like, so you find whatever on the menu is that thing too?
Yes. I actually have favorite things at restaurants, and I just order that favorite thing. I was at one of my favorite restaurants just the other night, and I got my mole tacos or mole enchiladas because I think they're the best mole enchiladas out there. So I just default to that. And I do that at a lot of restaurants. If I'm going to a barbecue place, I'm really a big fan of brisket. And I don't make brisket myself, so I order it at this restaurant because I know they do a really good job at it. So I do have a lot of default decisions so that I don't have to analyze, every time I sit down in a restaurant, oh, what am I hungry for today? It's like, no, I'm at El Adobe, I'm getting the mole taco or the mole enchiladas.
Now, what would you say to the person who says that they get bored with that though? They go to the same place maybe and there's only one thing on the menu that they like you said, but they do it really
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
but they have a propensity to get bored with that. What do you do with that?
Then have some backup choices. I'm not in the mood for the mole enchiladas today, so I'm going to get their, tacos al pastor because they do that just as well. Having a couple of backup decisions. During COVID, I got to the grocery store and my favorite brand of toilet paper was gone. So I figured out a couple of backups. If my favorite one's gone, then I'll go to this one and then that one. And hopefully one of those is there. If not, especially during the COVID lockdown, I just took whatever toilet paper they had. But yeah, having some backup decisions will definitely keep you from getting too bored with things, especially if it's a restaurant. There are restaurants that I do go to, probably a couple of times a month. And I've got, three or four things that I like on the menu. So then I kind of rotate through those. I'm not in the mood for this tonight, so we'll go to that. The next time we'll do the other.
And just going into decision fatigue because that causes us to second guess decisions, as we know, and that. How do you go about making or getting out of that sort of which toilet paper do I buy? Do you just choose one, try it, if you like it, you stay with it, or how do you make those fast decisions rather than sit there for 3 hours and try to figure it out?
Analyzing every kind of toilet paper there is. I start asking my friends, what toilet paper do you use and why do you like it and what do you not like about it? And, kind of going through that process. There is some research to decisions. You can't just say, well, I've always owned a Ford Focus, so I'm always going to buy a Ford Focus. The next time you go to buy a car, you need to do some research. Maybe Toyota's the better brand right now than the Ford. Maybe you want something a little bit more exotic. So there's some research, there's some decision process that you need to go through, but it doesn't have to be that decision fatigue with everything. You know, when you find a brand of milk you like, you buy that brand of milk. You don't have to keep rotating through every brand of milk. I went on this quest recently because I wanted to find a really good yogurt that I liked. So I went to the grocery store, I bought, kind of the different yogurts my friends said that they liked, and I tried them all and I decided on one.
I like that. So it's kind of a group effort then,
Yes.
relying on reviews and other things rather than.
Yes. Yeah, but you don't have to make it a new career every time you want to change a product. You don't have to spend days, weeks, years figuring it out. You know, talk to your friends and family, see what they like, read some of the Yelp reviews or Google reviews and see what they have to say and, make a decision and move on. And, if that decision works, keep going with it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Oh, you don't get me started on that. Like Microsoft, drag kicking and screaming, fixing it. There was a joke
Yes.
about that. Really quick aside. They said, there was a writer that really wanted to, really have impact and write stories that were compelling and would incite radical emotions in their readers. They got a job at Microsoft writing error messages. Oh yeah. Sorry, that was a little bit off topic.
Yeah. Sorry, I had something I was going to say and it just flew right out of my mind. I was, like I mentioned before, I was raised by an IBM programmer. So PCs are my comfort zone. I've been using a PC since I was 12 years old. And all of my friends in the photography world, oh, Apple's so much better. It's so much easier. It's so much this. It's so much that. And I'm like, but at this point in my life, I don't want to change. It might be better, but it won't be for me because I'm going to have to learn a whole new process. And at this point in my life, I don't want to do that. PCs work for me. I've got an Android phone. I know how to connect my Android phone to my PC computers, and I'm good.
I like that. I like that for sure. Oh, yeah, that's I like that. But yeah, they do say that Apple is better for creative, but I never got
Yeah.
into Apple
Yeah.
myself either.
Yeah. For many years, it was easier for me to be in the PC world because that's where my father was and that's where our equipment came from. Yeah. And I'm like, now I'm just too old to change and I'm fine.
No, I think about that. I think I might challenge the too old to change thing a little bit. I mean, not being okay with it and not wanting to is one thing, but being actually too old to do it. I don't
Yeah.
buy into that.
No, I don't either. I had the great fortune of meeting Betty White twice. Yes. The first time was when she was 92. Yeah. And she was all about, reinvent yourself every time you're bored with life. Reinvent yourself, find something new to do, tweak what you're doing. That's how you keep life fresh and, keep it going. And that's how she lived to be 99. She just kept, reinventing herself.
Yeah, I loved Betty White. It was such a loss,
Yes.
such a loss there that. Actually, no, I'm not going to call it a loss. I'm going to be, we'll be grateful that for the time we had with her, and hopefully somebody else will pick up the torch when they get to that age. Like somebody to follow in her footsteps. Hopefully.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah. And even in reinventing yourself, it doesn't have to be huge. I don't know if you've ever looked at like the Pepsi Cola logo and what it started with and what it is today is a huge difference. But if you look at it from every tweak they made to their logo, it was just a tiny little tweak just to freshen it up, just to make it a little bit more of whatever the era was. And then, a few years later, there is another little tweak. And most of the tweaks, you didn't see it from one to the other. But when you look from the beginning of Pepsi to today, it's a completely different logo. So just by tweaking your life, your business, your hobbies, whatever it is, just by tweaking it a little bit, stepping a little bit beyond your comfort zone, keeps it fresh and new and fun.
No, I like that. It's the butterfly effect too, right?
Yes.
Those small changes as you go further out create the bigger impacts. Kind of like when IBM had the first computers that calculated how to get to the moon, right? They always had to adjust slightly as they went. If they didn't, they would have missed the moon by what, like 10,000 miles or something.
Sounds about right.
Well, Elizabeth, this has been a really fun conversation. I could probably keep going for another couple hours, but
I could as well. You're fun to talk to. Thank you.
well, thank you. But that being said, we are coming up close to the time. Is there anything that you wish I would have asked but didn't ask, or anything you feel we should have covered that we didn't cover?
Right to think. Well, we've talked about setting up habits, routines, and rituals, and some ways about decluttering your mind. And we've talked about the ways to overcome fear and doubt in your life, which are my three main topics that I love to talk about. And we even touched on the creative daydreaming, which is another topic of mine. So I think we kind of covered it all. Yeah,
Well,
but I could talk on these topics all day long.
oh, I could as well. I I had it was my podcast coach that said, no, you cannot have 3 hour long episodes.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
My speaking and writing coach told me that I like need to break things down into smaller speeches and smaller blog posts. She's like, yeah, that's like 5 blog posts, not one. I'm like, oh, okay.
oh, it's back to that attention span, right?
Right, right.
Just before we do go, Elizabeth, what's the best way for our audience to get in touch with you and maybe learn more and you know
At
touch?
my website, elizabethtoller.com. They can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Elizabeth Toller Artist. And I also have a workbook to work through how to develop habits, routines, and rituals, declutter your mind, and overcome your fear and doubt. And they can find that at elizabethtoller.com/profitable.
Well, thank you so much for that. And to all our listeners, don't worry about grabbing a pen and paper. We are going to have that in the show notes for you, so it'll be easy for you to find. Once again, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being on the show. And to all our listeners, thank you again for tuning in. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and be that motivation and inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.